Hello, and thank you for joining us. We are just 3 hours away from President Trump's first State of the Union of his second term and what has been promised to be a long address focused on celebrating 250 years of America. CBS News has learned the president will make history by awarding a Medal of Honor during his speech to a 100-year-old veteran who served in the Korean War. His State of the Union comes at a critical time with the midterm elections later this year. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says President Trump will make the pitch to Americans to get out and vote and give him 3 more years with Republicans in control of Congress. At least 50 Democratic lawmakers are planning to boycott the president's speech instead of protest methods used in years past by both parties, like heckling or holding signs. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson spoke exclusively with CBS Evening News anchor Tony Dokoupil ahead of tonight's address about the planned boycotts.
I think it's going to be a great celebration for our side. I think the admonition for decorum is to the other team. You saw the antics that they put on display, the Democrats, during the last State of the Union. I had to actually
Republicans over the years have been known to perform their own bits of antics. And
at every turn, I have encouraged my colleagues to maintain decorum and the dignity of the office. I think it's important for the institution and for the American people to see. I think what we should put on display tonight, I told my colleagues this morning, is what the USA hockey teams did in the Olympics. We play for one team. We're all for America. I think it's detestable that members would boycott the speech. We've never done that. It doesn't matter if there's a Democrat president. You go and respect the office. You respect the decorum, the institution, the tradition of having had this speech made. And it's sad to me that Democrats are choosing to opt out of it.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer spoke ahead of the president's address, predicting that President Trump's sentiment on the state of the country will not match how many Americans feel.
Instead of driving down costs, he's driving over people's pocketbooks. So tonight, Americans aren't going to get the real State of the Union. Those days are long gone under Trump. What Americans will get is a state of deception, a state of denial.
CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi joins me now. So what have we heard from the White House about what the president will highlight in his speech?
Well, Lindsay, it's good to be with you. That speech is going to be delivered in 3 hours from now. The president's going to make his way from here, the White House, to the Capitol. We're expecting this to be a speech that is majority on the economy. We're expecting the president to talk about tax cuts, mainly to call for new tax cuts. Of course, affordability is top of mind as this administration heads into the midterms. The president is expected to give really kind of a playbook for Republicans to use in the upcoming midterms, talking about issues like lowering gas prices, lowering housing prices, lowering rent. Overseeing all of this, of course, will be the president's agenda on tariffs. We know last week that the Supreme Court struck down his tariff agenda, which has really undermined his economic agenda here at the White House. So expect him to touch on that. We are also expecting the president to tout the success of Operation Midnight Hammer. That was those B-2 bombers that went into Iran and struck their nuclear capabilities. Of course, in the last several weeks, we have seen a military force amount in the seas off of, or in the Mediterranean Sea and the Gulf off of Iran, where the president is still waging whether or not to take strikes or not. He is going to talk about Iran in some capacity tonight, we are told, and also about making a deal with Iran. CBS News also found out that the president is expected to talk about his efforts to bring down crime across the U.S., particularly in in D.C., Memphis, and New Orleans, areas where there have been immigration raids, as well as the National Guard on the streets.
Can you give us a rundown of some of the guests that we're going to see tonight?
Well, it's interesting because we are told that the U.S. men's hockey team will be there tonight in some capacity. But of course, this presents somewhat of a logistical challenge because there are many of them and not many spaces for them to be at in this already packed chamber. But as you reported earlier, there are about 50 or so Democrats who are optioning out tonight, who will not be there. So perhaps they will fill some of those seats. We are just not quite sure. Other people we are told who will be there tonight include Sarah Beckstrom's parents. She is a member of the National Guard who was here in Washington, D.C., who was part of that ambush attack last November. She was tragically killed. Her parents are guests tonight of the president. Delilah Coleman, who's a 7-year-old who was critically injured in a 6-car pileup in California, and it was allegedly caused by a truck driver who was here in the country illegally. She will also be in the president's box tonight. There are a variety of other people who were told who will be there, including Erica Kirk, who is the widow of Charlie Kirk, as the president is expected to talk about political violence tonight. Lindsay?
Olivia Rinaldi, thank you. CBS News political director Finn Gómez joins me now. So, Finn, will the president be able to simply tout what he's tried to do to bring down costs, or will he have to do more to convince an electorate that is still feeling the pinch?
Look, I think he's going to have to do more. If you look at that, if you look at what Anthony said in his poll that came out, but he can point to the steps he's taken to try to bring down costs. The White House says he's going to lay out a very ambitious agenda focused on making America more affordable, and he will stress that economic indicators are showing improvement. Inflation has cooled down from its peak, and wages in some sectors have risen. But politics is about perception and pocketbooks, Lindsay. If voters still feel squeezed at the grocery store or by housing and energy costs, that could really outweigh any big picture economic data, and our polling shows that they are still feeling that pain. So the challenge for the president tonight isn't just listing actions taken, it's convincing Americans that those actions are translating into real everyday economic relief, and that they will see real progress that is meaningful and lasting. And yes, and as Olivia mentioned, he's also laying out what amounts to a Republican blueprint for the midterms, and Republicans that I spoke to say, yes, they are facing historical headwinds and slipping in the polls, but they feel that they can turn it around by doubling down on how they will fix affordability, a top issue for most Americans.
How unusual is it for more than 50 Democrats to boycott? Has this been done before?
It's not common, but it's also not unheard of for lawmakers to skip a State of the Union address. Over the years, individual members of both parties have boycotted the address as a form of protest. Democrats during Republican administrations and Republicans during Democratic ones. The first organized boycott, Lindsay, actually was in 1971 when all 12 African-American members of the House boycotted then-President Richard Nixon's remarks after he repeatedly refused to meet with them. It's unusual. It's usually a small amount of members, not an organized, large-scale boycott, as we're seeing tonight, with at least 50 members of the Democratic caucus not attending. So it's really unprecedented what we are seeing tonight. Lindsay.
All right, Finn Gómez, thank you.